Chapter 1. The Banishment. The snow burned her feet. Not from cold, from the way it swallowed her steps, erased her existence, and kept moving as if she had never stood there at all. "Please," she said, her voice breaking as the iron gates groaned open behind her. Just look at me." Her hands were wrapped around her belly, instinctive, desperate. The child inside her shifted, a soft flutter that felt impossibly fragile against the roar of the crowd. Above her, on the high obsidian dais, he did not move. The Dragon King stood rigid, his crown heavy on his brow, his face carved into something cruelly still. His eyes, those eyes that had once softened when he spoke her name, did not meet hers. A herald's voice thundered across the courtyard. "By decree of the council and command of His Majesty, the woman Alara of no house is hereby cast out from the realm. She is forbidden to return upon pain of death." The words struck harder than any blade. Alara staggered forward. "No," she whispered, then louder, "no, you can't let them do this. You know what this child is. You know it's yours." A murmur rippled through the stone ranks. Fear, anger, hunger for spectacle. The king's jaw tightened. Still he said nothing. Chains rattled as guards stepped closer, their spears angled, not at her heart, but at her womb. Something inside Alara shattered. She looked up at him again, tears burning down her cheeks. "You promised me," she said. "You promised I would never stand alone." For one terrible moment she thought he would speak. The air around him trembled just slightly, like the breath before a storm. She felt it in her bones, in the child that stirred again, uneasy. Then the king lifted his hand, a single, restrained motion. The gates opened fully, and Alara understood. He was letting her go. The guards did not touch her. They did not need to. Exile was worse than death in Dracoran. Death ended pain. Exile stretched it into years. Alara took one step forward, then another. Every movement felt wrong, like walking away from her own heart. Behind her, the city rose in black spires and dragon-carved stone home to legends, to terror, to love. Above it all loomed the Dragon King's citadel, carved into the mountain itself, veins of ancient fire glowing faintly beneath its skin. She had slept there once, curled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and impossibly calm. Now that calm was killing her. "Stop," she whispered. She didn't know who she was begging anymore. The guards, the gods, or the man who refused to look at her. Her foot crossed the threshold. The boundary rune flared beneath the snow. Exile had begun. Pain lanced through her chest as the magic sealed. Not physical pain, something deeper, the bond. The invisible thread that tied her to the realm, to him, strained violently. She gasped and dropped to her knees. A sharp intake of breath echoed from the dais. Alara looked up. For the first time, the Dragon King's eyes met hers, and she saw it. The anguish, the fury barely leashed, the fear. His hands were clenched so tightly that blood trickled down his palm, dark against the stone. The air around him shuddered again, stronger now, heat rippling like a mirage. Dragons did not weep, but kings did, and he was both. They did not speak again. The gate slammed shut. The sound echoed for miles. Alara forced herself to stand. She would not collapse where they could see her break. She turned her back on the city and began to walk. The world beyond Dracoran was quieter, too quiet. The snow thinned into frost, then into bare earth as the mountain path descended. With every step, Alara felt something tear loose inside her, threads of magic unraveling, the realm rejecting her like a foreign body. She had known this would happen. They had warned her. "If the child is born within the realm," the council had said, "it will bind the Dragon King's blood to mortal flesh in ways we cannot control." They had not said monster, but they had thought it. She pressed a hand to her belly again. "It's all right," she murmured. "I won't let them hurt you," the child answered with a faint pulse of warmth. Dragon blood. That was the truth no one wanted spoken aloud. The Dragon King's heir, half human, half something older than fire. A miracle. A threat. She stumbled, catching herself against a twisted pine. Her breath came in ragged pulls. Memories rose unbidden. She had not known he was the Dragon King when they met. He had been traveling alone, cloaked in ash-gray wool, his power folded so tightly around himself that even the air did not dare react. Alara had offered him bread. That was how it began. She had lived at the edge of the realm then, in a village too small to matter. She had been ordinary, unremarkable, safe. He had smiled at her like he had never been allowed to smile before. "My name is Kyle," he had said. She learned the truth weeks later, when the sky split open and a dragon's shadow blotted out the sun. When she realized the man she loved ruled with fire and fear and chose restraint every single day. The exile road wound downward, narrow and treacherous. By nightfall, Alara's legs trembled with exhaustion. She found shelter beneath an overhang of stone and collapsed onto the cold ground, curling instinctively around her belly. The wind carried distant sounds from the mountains, low, resonant, like thunder breathing. Dragons. She pressed her face into her cloak and sobbed silently. Why would he let this happen? The question burned with every heartbeat. She knew the answer, and still, it hurt. High above, in the citadel of Dracoran, Kale stood alone. The council chamber was empty now. The torches guttered low, reacting nervously to his barely contained power. His crown lay discarded on the stone floor. Kale stared at his bloodied hands. "She's beyond the boundary," one of the elders had said softly. "It is done. Done." As if exile were a ritual, not a wound carved into the world. Kale's breath shuddered, his vision swam. For centuries he had mastered control. His dragon had obeyed, his fire had slept. But now, the bond screamed, not the ancient bond to the realm, the newer one, the fragile one. The one tied to a woman walking alone into the dark with his child beneath her heart. He sank to one knee. A low growl tore from his chest before he could stop it, vibrating through the stone, rattling the windows. "She will survive," the elder had insisted. "She is strong." Kale laughed, sharp and broken. "So is fire," he said. "That does not make it gentle." He had chosen duty, he told himself that. If he had defied the council, civil war would have followed. The realm would have burned, dragons would have risen. And Alara, human, vulnerable, would have been the first target. Exile was the only way to keep her alive, even if it destroyed him. 3 days into exile, the sickness began. Alara woke before dawn, nausea twisting her gut, her skin clammy with cold sweat. She barely made it outside the shallow cave she had found before retching into the dirt. Her body shook violently. She clutched her belly, panic rising. "No, no, please!" The warmth returned, stronger this time, steadying her. The child calmed her, as if sensing her fear. Tears streamed down her face. "You're protecting me now," she whispered. "You shouldn't have to." She forced herself to stand again. She would keep moving. She would survive, if only to prove that she was more than the sacrifice they had made her. By the 5th night, she reached the edge of the realm's influence. The air changed there. Magic thinned, like breath at high altitude. The sky felt farther away. Alara stopped at the crest of a hill and turned back. From here, the mountains of Dracoran loomed like black teeth against the horizon. Storm clouds churned unnaturally above the peaks. She knew what that meant. Kale was not calm. She pressed a hand to her chest, to the place where their bond had been strongest. "I forgive you," she whispered into the wind, though her voice broke on the words. "But I will not disappear." A sudden pulse of heat answered her, faint, distant, unmistakable. For a heartbeat, she felt him. Then it was gone. Alara stepped forward. Beyond this point, she would no longer be under the Dragon King's protection. Beyond this point, the world would see her child and fear it. She drew a steadying breath. The ground changed beneath her feet. The last trace of Dracoran's magic faded. And as she crossed fully into exile, a single, devastating truth settled into her bones. She had not been banished because she was weak. She had been banished because her child was powerful enough to change everything. Behind her, far beyond the mountains, a dragon roared, raw, furious, and grieving. Alara did not look back again. But somewhere deep within her, a promise took root. Years from now, she thought, when they can no longer control the outcome, he will find us. And when he does, the world will have to answer for what it has done. Chapter 2. The Long Night of Exile. The cold did not stop. It crept into Alara's bones, settled there, and refused to leave. She woke before dawn with her teeth chattering so hard her jaw ached. The thin blanket she had scavenged from the ruined cart did nothing against the wind that sliced through the valley. Her fingers were numb, her legs trembled when she tried to stand. For a moment, just one, she lay still and wondered if this was how it ended, not with fire or claws or judgment. Just cold, quiet, forgotten. Her hand moved to her belly before the thought finished forming. "No," she whispered, breath fogging the air. "Not yet." The child answered her the way it always did now, with warmth. It spread slowly, a gentle heat beneath her skin, not enough to banish the cold, but enough to remind her she was not alone. Alara pushed herself upright, biting back a groan. The ground beneath her was frozen solid, sharp stones pressing through her thin boots. The sky above was gray and heavy, promising snow. Exile had no mercy. She gathered what little she had and began to walk again. The land beyond Dracoran felt wrong. Not cursed, not dead, just indifferent. The forests were sparse, the trees twisted and bare, their branches clawing at the sky. The rivers ran shallow and fast, too cold to drink without pain. Animals watched her from a distance, lean, wary, ready to flee. No one offered shelter, no one offered food. By the third day, hunger gnawed at her constantly. By the fourth, her steps slowed. By the fifth, she had begun to talk to herself just to hear a voice. "You knew this would be hard," she murmured, stumbling down a rocky slope. You knew. She had known. But knowing was not the same as enduring. Her body was changing faster now. The sickness came and went in waves. Her balance felt off. Her senses sharpened in strange ways. She could smell rain hours before it fell, feel the shift in the wind before storms broke. Sometimes, when she was very tired, she thought she heard wings. She never looked up. At night, the memories came. She could not stop them. She would close her eyes and see him as he had been with her, not crowned, not distant, not carved from stone, just Kale. She remembered the way he used to watch the fire, his expression thoughtful, controlled, as if even flame required his permission to exist. "You don't have to hold everything so tightly," she had told him once. He had smiled faintly. "If I let go," he said, "things burn." She had laughed then, soft and fearless. "Not everything," she said. "Some things just warm you." Now she lay awake in the dark, staring at the stars, wondering if she had been wrong. On the seventh night the storm came. It hit without warning, a wall of wind and ice that tore through the valley with a sound like screaming. Alara barely had time to find cover beneath a low rock ledge before the snow began to fall in thick, blinding sheets. The temperature dropped sharply. Her breath came out in ragged bursts. She wrapped her arms around herself and curled inward, trying to shield her belly from the worst of it. Fear clawed at her chest. "If I fall asleep," she thought, "I won't wake up." She pressed her forehead to the cold stone and forced herself to stay alert. "Please," she whispered, to the world, to the gods, to the man who could not hear her. "Just let us get through this." The warmth inside her flared suddenly, stronger than ever before. It spread through her limbs, easing the ache in her muscles, sharpening her focus. The shaking slowed. Her breath steadied. Alara gasped. "What?" The heat pulsed again, responding to her awareness. Not random, not imagined. She stared down at her belly, heart pounding. The child moved, not a flutter this time, but a deliberate shift, like something stretching, testing its strength. A rush of emotion flooded her, fear, awe, disbelief, dragon blood. She had known in her mind. But this was proof. Tears streamed down her face as she laughed softly, hysterically. "You're too strong," she whispered. "They were right to be afraid." The thought hurt more than she expected. When the storm passed, the world was buried. Snow lay thick across the valley, smoothing everything into white emptiness. Alara emerged from her shelter slowly, blinking against the pale light. She was alive. Barely, but alive. Her body felt hollowed out, drained. The warmth had faded again, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She knew then that whatever the child was doing, it came at a cost. To her. "I won't ask again," she said quietly, as if the child could understand. "Not unless we have no other choice." The warmth flickered, then stilled. Agreement, or instinct. Either way, it steadied her resolve. She had been cast out to die. She would not give them that satisfaction. As she traveled, fragments of the truth surfaced, memories she had not allowed herself to examine before. The council chamber, the way the elders had avoided her gaze, the words they had chosen. "The child cannot be born within the realm. Its existence will destabilize the balance. Prophecy speaks of fire unbound. They had not said evil, they had said uncontrollable." She remembered one voice in particular, old, thin, trembling, not with fear but with certainty. "This child is not merely his heir," the elder had said. "It is a convergence, dragon and mortal, flame and flesh. If born under the Dragon King's rule, it will bind his power in ways that may destroy us all." Alara had laughed then, incredulous despite her fear. "It's a baby," she had said. "Not a weapon." The elder had looked at her with something like pity. "Everything born of dragons is a weapon," he had replied softly, "even when it does not mean to be." She swallowed now, walking slowly through the snow. Had Kale believed them, or had he simply been trapped by them? The question gnawed at her. She dreamed of him often, not as king, as the man who had held her when the weight of the world became too much. In one dream, he stood behind a wall of fire, his face twisted with anguish, reaching for her but unable to cross. In another, he turned away. Those dreams hurt the most. She woke from them gasping, her heart racing, anger rising sharp and bitter. "You could have fought," she whispered into the empty air. "You could have chosen us." The wind did not answer. But somewhere far away, a dragon screamed. High in the mountains, Kale knelt before the ancient stone. The binding altar pulsed faintly beneath his hands, runes glowing a dull red. Chains of magic coiled around the chamber, woven by the council long before his reign. "You are too late," one of the elders said behind him. "The exile is sealed." Kyle did not turn. His voice was low, controlled, dangerous. "Release me." A pause. "That is not possible." The altar flared as Kyle's power surged, fire licking along the carved runes. The chamber shook, dust rained from the ceiling. "You bind me with laws written by cowards," he said. "You hide behind prophecy and call it wisdom." The elder's voice trembled but did not break. "We bind you to protect the realm, including her." Kale's hands tightened on the stone. "Lies," he snarled. "If you act," the elder continued, "if you cross the boundary yourself, the bond between you and the realm will fracture. The dragons will rise. The war you fear will come." Kale closed his eyes. He saw Alara's face as the gates closed. He saw her hand over her belly. He felt the bond scream and stretch until it nearly snapped. "What would you have me do?" he asked hoarsely. "Wait," the elder said. Kale laughed, a broken sound. "You ask a dragon to wait while his mate bleeds. She lives," the elder said, "because you allowed her to leave." Kale said nothing. Silence was his prison. Alara found a settlement on the 12th day. It was barely more than a cluster of stone huts huddled around a dying fire, but the sight of smoke made her knees buckle with relief. She approached cautiously, hood drawn low. Eyes followed her immediately, too thin, too pale, too alone. A woman stepped forward, her expression guarded. "We don't have much," she said. "If you're looking for charity." "I'll work," Alara said quickly. "Anything. Please." The woman hesitated, then nodded toward a low building. "You can rest there tonight. We'll talk in the morning." It was more kindness than Alara had expected. That night, wrapped in borrowed wool, she slept deeper than she had since the exile began, and dreamed of fire. The work was hard. She hauled water, cleaned tools, mended nets. Her body protested every movement, but she pushed through the pain. Some of the villagers watched her with curiosity, others with suspicion. They noticed her pregnancy. They noticed the way the cold seemed to bother her less than it should. They noticed the faint warmth that lingered around her when she slept. Whispers began. She kept her head down. She had learned what fear could do. One evening, as she scrubbed her hands raw in the river, a sharp pain lanced through her belly. She cried out and dropped to her knees, panic surging. "No, no, please!" The warmth surged again, violent this time. The river hissed as steam rose where her hands touched the water. Alara froze. So did the woman standing behind her. "What in the God's name?" the woman whispered. Alara pulled her hands back, heart pounding. The water had begun to freeze again, as if nothing had happened. Too late. The woman was staring at her in horror. "You need to leave," she said, voice shaking, "before others see." Alara nodded, tears blurring her vision. "I understand." She packed what little she had and left before dawn. Again. As she walked away from the settlement, grief settled heavy in her chest. Not just for herself, for the child. "This world will fear you," she whispered, "no matter where we go." The child shifted, warm and steady. Alara straightened. "Then we will teach it not to hate them back." The resolve felt new, solid. She was no longer just surviving, she was preparing. The land changed again as she traveled farther. The air grew thicker, heavier with old magic. Ruins dotted the landscape, broken towers, half-buried stones etched with symbols older than Dracarin itself. She felt watched, not hunted, observed. One night, as she sat by a small fire, she heard footsteps. Her heart leapt into her throat. "Who's there?" she called, gripping a stone. Silence. Then, a voice, low and careful. "You shouldn't be here." A figure stepped into the firelight, cloaked and hooded. Alara stood slowly, fear coiling tight. "I'm just passing through," she said. The figure tilted their head. "No one passes through this land by accident." The warmth stirred inside her again, alert. The figure's gaze dropped to her belly and widened. "Oh," they breathed. "So it's true." Alara's blood ran cold. "What's true?" she demanded. The figure smiled, not kindly. "That the Dragon King's exile walks the world with fire in her womb." Alara backed away, heart hammering. "Who are you?" she asked. The figure did not answer. Instead, they stepped back into the darkness. But Alara knew. She was no longer alone, and somewhere, far too far away, a king bound by chains of law and prophecy felt a sudden, violent pull in his chest. Something had shifted. Something had been found. Alara wrapped her arms around her belly, fear and determination warring inside her. "This is no longer just my story," she whispered. The fire inside her answered. And it was listening. Chapter 3: The Fire That Learned to Breathe, 7 years later. The kettle cracked before it screamed. Alara was already moving when the sound came, a sharp, brittle snap that cut through the quiet morning like a warning. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and lifted the iron kettle from the hearth, just as the metal began to glow faintly along its seam. "Easy," she murmured. The glow faded. The kettle cooled under her grip, warm but harmless, as if it had never been on the brink of splitting apart. Behind her, small bare feet padded across the stone floor. "Did I do it again?" a child's voice asked. Alara turned. The boy stood near the doorway, dark hair falling into his eyes, his expression calm in a way that never quite matched his age. He could have been any village child, thin from hard living, dressed in patched wool, barefoot despite the chill, except for the heat. The faint shimmer in the air around him like the memory of flame. "You felt it, didn't you?" Alara asked gently. He nodded once. It was too loud. She crouched and rested her hands on his shoulders. They were warm, always warm, not fevered, not sick, just warm. "You didn't mean to," she said, "but we still have to be careful." "I know," he said seriously. "I was trying to hold it." She believed him. He had been holding it his whole life. The valley had changed. Where once it had been bare and empty, stubborn life had taken root. Scrub grass clung to the hillsides. A narrow path cut through the rocks where Alara's feet and later, smaller ones had worn it smooth over the years. Their home was a single-room stone hut built into the slope of the hill, hidden from the road by a stand of twisted pines. Smoke from the chimney curled low and thin, designed to blend with the morning mist. Hidden, but real. Fragile, but theirs. Alara straightened and returned the kettle to the hearth, adjusting the stones with practiced hands. She moved differently now, more efficiently, with fewer wasted motions. The softness she once carried had been tempered, not erased. Motherhood had done that. Exile had finished the work. "Go wash up," she told the boy. "Breakfast won't wait." He grinned, quick, bright, and darted outside. She listened to his footsteps fade, then closed her eyes briefly. 7 years, 7 winters survived, 7 summers endured, 7 years of watching the world from the edges, always ready to run. She had learned which lands were safest, which roads to avoid, which towns would ask questions, and which would pretend not to see. She had learned how to disappear without vanishing, and how to stay alive. The boy returned, hands dripping, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Elian," she said mildly, "dry your hands." He wiped them on his trousers without apology. She set 2 bowls on the small table and ladled out thin porridge. It wasn't much, but it was warm, and it would carry them through the morning. Elian sat across from her, swinging his legs slightly. "Did you dream again?" he asked between bites. Alara paused. "Why do you ask?" "Because you get quiet," he said, "like you're listening to something far away." She smiled faintly. "I was just thinking." He accepted that, nodding as if it made perfect sense. Elian was like that. He noticed things, then let them go. Fire did not cling, it moved. Later, they worked the garden together. Alara knelt in the dirt, fingers deft as she weeded between stubborn roots. Elian sat nearby, coaxing a small flame between his palms, no bigger than a candle's glow. "Lower," she instructed without looking. "Feel it, don't force it." He frowned in concentration. The flame shrank, steadied, then vanished. He exhaled slowly, pleased. "That was better," she said. "I didn't burn the dirt this time," he said proudly. "No," she agreed. "You didn't." The first time it had happened, he had been 3. He had tripped and fallen into the fire pit. Alara had screamed. He had stood up, unhurt, embers clinging harmlessly to his clothes like curious insects. After that, there had been no more pretending. She had taught him control the only way she knew how. Through patience, repetition, and fear she never let him see. As the sun climbed higher, a distant sound reached them. "Hooves." Alara froze. Elian looked up, alert but calm. "People," he said. "Yes," she replied quietly. She rose and wiped her hands on her skirt, scanning the ridge above the valley. A small group of riders crested the hill, 3, maybe 4, moving slowly, deliberately. Not merchants, not lost, her stomach tightened. Inside, she said. Elian obeyed instantly, slipping into the hut without argument. She followed, closing the door and barring it from within. Her heart beat steadily, controlled. Fear was a tool now, not a master. She peered through the narrow window as the riders descended the path, their cloaks dark, their movements disciplined. Soldiers, not Dracoran's colors. But close enough. They did not stop. They passed the hidden turnoff without looking toward the trees, continuing down the road toward the distant settlements beyond the valley. Alara did not breathe again until the sound of hooves faded completely. Elian emerged from behind her, peering out the window. "Were they looking for us?" he asked. "Not today," she said. "But maybe soon?" She met his eyes. "Yes," she said honestly, "maybe." He considered that, then nodded once. "Okay." She swallowed hard. Rumors traveled faster than armies. She heard them in fragments, carried by traders and wanderers who passed near enough to speak. The Dragon King had tightened his rule. The council had fractured. Old laws were being challenged, borders were restless. Some said the king had grown colder, more distant. Others whispered that he had nearly burned a council hall to the ground. No one spoke his name lightly anymore. And sometimes, rarely, someone would mention a search, quiet, unofficial, denied by all involved, looking for a woman, looking for a child. Alara listened, and kept moving. That night, as Elian slept curled beneath a blanket too small for him now, Alara sat by the hearth and stared into the low fire. She saw him in the flames, not as a king, as a man standing on a dais, hands bleeding, eyes breaking as he let her go. "I'm still here," she whispered, not sure who she was speaking to. "I didn't disappear." The fire crackled softly. No answer came. But somewhere deep inside her chest, something shifted. The first real mistake happened in the market town. They had avoided it for years, skirting its edges, trading only when necessary. But winter had been hard, and supplies were low. Alara needed salt, Elian needed boots. They went in together, hoods drawn low. The market buzzed with noise and life. Too many eyes, too many voices. Alara moved quickly, efficiently. "Elian," she said softly, "stay close." "I am," he replied. They were nearly done when it happened. A cart tipped, a man shouted. A barrel rolled free, heading straight for a child standing frozen in its path. Alara moved without thinking. So did Elian. He stepped forward, one hand outstretched. The barrel stopped, not slammed, not shattered. It stopped as if pressed against an invisible wall. The air shimmered, heat rippled outward. The crowd fell silent. Alara's blood turned to ice. Elian looked down at his hand, then back at her. "I didn't mean to," he said, confused. "I just—" "Run," she whispered. Too late. Someone laughed nervously. "Did you see that? That wasn't normal. What kind of trick?" A man near the edge of the crowd stared at Elian with dawning horror. "Dragon," he whispered. Alara grabbed Elian's wrist and ran. Shouts followed. Not angry, afraid, that was worse. They did not stop until they reached the forest, lungs burning, hearts pounding. Alara collapsed against a tree, pulling Elian close, scanning the shadows for pursuit. None came, yet. Elian clung to her, shaking. "I didn't want to," he said. "I was trying to help, I know," she said fiercely. "I know." She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Listen to me. What you are, what you can do, it's not wrong. But the world doesn't understand it." "Because of him," Elian said quietly, her breath caught. "Who?" she asked. He frowned, searching for words. "The fireman. In my dreams." Alara's hands trembled. "What does he look like?" she whispered. Elian hesitated. "Sad," he said finally. "And angry." And, waiting. Her heart thundered. They did not return to the valley. They traveled by night, pushing deeper into the old lands, where ruins and ancient magic tangled thick in the air. Alara felt it now, the shift she had feared for years. Hiding was no longer enough. Elian was growing. So was his power. And the world had noticed. 3 days later, she felt it. A pressure in her chest, a pull she had not felt since the night of exile. She staggered, grabbing Elian's shoulder. "Mama?" he asked, alarmed. She closed her eyes, breathing through the sensation. It was faint, but unmistakable. The bond, stirring, awakening. Far away, in a citadel carved from stone and fire, a king lifted his head. The past had found them, and this time it was not going to let go. Chapter 4. When Fire Knows Its Own. The air changed before the sound came. Alara felt it first, a pressure behind her ribs, heavy and ancient, like the moment before a storm breaks open the sky. The forest stilled around them. Birds fell silent. Even the wind seemed to draw back, holding its breath. Elian stopped walking. "Mama," he said quietly, "he's here." Her heart slammed into her throat. "No," she whispered, though every instinct screamed otherwise. "Stay behind me." She turned slowly. The path ahead of them opened into a broken clearing where old stone lay half buried beneath moss and roots. The ruins of something long forgotten, pillars cracked, symbols worn smooth by time, and at the center of it, fire, not roaring, not wild, contained. A tall figure stood within it, the flames bending inward, bowing as if in recognition rather than attack. He wore no crown, no armor, just dark travel leathers dusted with ash, but the power around him bent the world all the same. Alara's breath caught painfully in her chest. "Kael." The Dragon King lifted his head. Their eyes met. The bond snapped tight between them, sudden and violent, like a chain yanked from both ends. Alara staggered back a step. 7 years of silence shattered in a single heartbeat. Kael did not move toward her, he did not speak. He stood as if carved from stone, his gaze fixed on her face as though he might lose it again if he blinked. She looked older, thinner, harder, alive. The relief nearly dropped him to his knees, then his gaze shifted, down, to the boy standing behind her. The heat. The unmistakable echo of his own fire. Kael's control cracked. The flames around him flared sharply, licking outward before snapping back under iron restraint. His breath hitched, his vision blurred. So this is him, not a prophecy, not a threat, a child, his child. "Mama," Elian whispered, fingers tightening in her cloak. "He looks sad." Kael flinched. Alara felt the sound like a blade between her ribs. Sad, if only that were all he was. "You shouldn't be here," Alara said. Her voice came out steady, controlled, nothing like the chaos ripping through her chest. Kael swallowed hard. "Neither should you." Anger flared, hot and immediate. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You're right, I shouldn't, but you made sure I was." The words struck cleanly. Kael closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing himself against a blow. "Alara, don't," she snapped. "Do not say my name like you so have a right to it." The flames dimmed. He opened his eyes again, pain naked in them. "I never stopped." "You stopped when the gates closed," she said. Everything else came after. Silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. Elian shifted behind her. "Mama," he said again, uneasy, "people are coming." She hadn't heard them, but now she did. Boots, shouting, the distant clash of steel, hunters. Kael's jaw tightened. He turned his head slightly, listening. "They tracked the disturbance," he said. "Your son." "My son," she repeated sharply. He nodded. "Yes, him." The way he said it, careful, reverent, twisted something painful in her chest. "We have to move," he continued. "Now." Alara hesitated for half a second, then nodded once. They ran. The forest exploded into motion around them. Kael took the lead without question, his movements fluid, precise. Alara followed, breath steady despite the burn in her lungs. Elian kept pace beside her, feet barely touching the ground, guided by instinct rather than fear. Arrows hissed through the trees. Kael lifted one hand, the air rippled, the arrows dissolved into ash mid-flight. Elian stared, wide-eyed. "You can do that?" he breathed. Kael glanced back at him and nearly lost control again. "Yes," he said hoarsely, "so can you. One day." Alara shot him a warning look. "Not now." Kael inclined his head. "Not now." They burst into another clearing, this one narrow, boxed in by fallen stone and thorny undergrowth. Too exposed. Too trapped. Kael cursed under his breath. "They're hurting us. Who?" Alara demanded. "Not my men," he said grimly, "and not the council's." As if summoned by his words, figures emerged from the trees, cloaked, armored, faces hidden behind sigils burned into blackened steel. Dragonbane. Alara's blood ran cold. She had heard the name only once, years ago, whispered by a traitor who had crossed himself afterward. "Who are they?" she asked. Kael's expression darkened. "Those who believe the only good dragon is a dead one." "And the child?" she pressed. He met her eyes. "Especially the child." Elian stiffened, the heat around him spiked. Alara pulled him close. "Breathe," she murmured urgently, "like I taught you." He nodded, focusing. The heat steadied. Kael watched, awe and guilt warring across his face. The Dragonbane advanced. "King of Ash," one of them called. "Step aside." Kale stepped forward instead. No, you cannot protect him forever, the voice continued. Give us the boy and the woman lives. Alara's vision went red. She drew a knife from her belt without thinking. Kale did not look back at her. You will leave, he said softly, dangerously, or you will burn. Laughter answered him. You won't risk it, not with him here. Kale smiled. It was not kind. The ground beneath the dragonbane cracked. Fire erupted, not wild, not consuming, but precise, surgical. It forced them back, broke their formation. Elian gasped. Kale staggered slightly, pain flashing across his features as the binding magic dragged at him. Alara saw it. You're hurt, she said sharply. He shook his head. Later. The dragonbane regrouped faster than expected. Chains flew, etched with runes, glowing cold blue. Kael caught one, muscles straining as frost crept up his arm. He gritted his teeth, fighting the binding. Alara moved without thinking. She stepped forward, blade flashing, severing the chain before it could anchor. The backlash threw her off her feet. Alara! Kael roared. She hit the ground hard, air ripped from her lungs. Elian screamed. Something inside him snapped. The heat exploded. Not outward, inward. The chains froze mid-air, then shattered. A wave of force rippled through the clearing, knocking the dragonbane back like leaves in a gale. Silence followed. Elian stood trembling, eyes glowing faintly, not red, not gold, but something deeper. Older. Kyle stared, his breath caught painfully. That's my fire, he whispered. Alara scrambled to her feet, panic and awe colliding. Elian, look at me. The glow faded. Elian blinked, frightened. I didn't want to, he said. They were going to take me. She pulled him into her arms, shaking. You did nothing wrong. Kale turned away sharply, fists clenched. The guilt hit him like a physical blow. The dragonbane retreated, for now. Kale knew better than to believe it was over. They'll bring more, he said. Stronger words, better chains. Alara's voice was cold. So this is what you brought to my door. He flinched. I didn't lead them to you. You didn't stop them either. Fair, painfully fair. I've been fighting them for years, he said quietly, in shadows, in silence. Silence is what nearly killed us, she replied, their eyes locked. 7 years of hurt, rage, longing, and grief pressed into that moment. Elian watched them both, uncertain. Kale exhaled slowly. We can't stay here. Alara nodded. I know. A pause. I'm not coming back, she said flatly. Not to your city, not to your throne. Kale did not argue. I wouldn't ask you to, he said. That hurt more than if he had. They moved again, deeper into the ruins. The air grew heavy with old magic, ancient and watching. Alara's legs burned. A lion leaned into her side, tired now that the danger had passed. Kale slowed, matching their pace. You kept him safe, he said quietly. She did not look at him. I did what you couldn't. The words cut. I know. She stopped walking and turned on him, fury finally breaking through her control. No, she said fiercely. You don't. You have no idea what it cost. His eyes burned. Then tell me, she laughed, bitter. Tell you about starving, about running, about watching people look at him like he's a monster? He said nothing. I buried my past to keep him alive, she continued. I taught him to fear himself because the world would. Tears burned her eyes, but she did not let them fall. And now you appear, like a ghost from a life I already survived. Kale stepped closer, voice breaking. I never stopped searching. You waited 7 years, she said. That's not searching, that's choosing safety. His control cracked again. I was bound, he said, by laws older than me, by a realm that would have burned if I defied it. And I burned instead, she replied. Silence fell. Elian shifted, confused, frightened by the tension. Kale noticed and stepped back, shame flooding him. This isn't his burden, he said softly. No, Alara agreed. It's yours and mine. The ground trembled. Kale stiffened. Too late, he muttered. From the shadows ahead, more figures emerged. Not Dragonbane, something worse. Sigils flared, a voice rang out, cold, triumphant. There you are. Kale's blood ran cold. One of the council elders stepped into the light, flanked by guards. You broke exile law, the elder said calmly. You revealed the child. Alara's heart sank. The elder's gaze fixed on Elian. Magnificent, he murmured, just as the prophecy said. Kale moved instantly, placing himself between them. No, he growled. You will not touch him. The elder smiled. You will surrender. Chains ignited around Kale, ancient and absolute. He dropped to one knee, power forced inward. Alara screamed his name. Elian cried out, heat surging again. Guards lunged. Alara's world narrowed to one horrifying truth. She had survived exile, she had protected her son, and now the past had found them. Too late. The chains snapped tight around Kael. The elder's voice echoed, "Choose, Dragon King." And the world held its breath. Chapter 5. What fire was meant to guard. The chains did not burn. That was the first thing Alara noticed as they tightened around Kael. They glowed with ancient runes, cold and blue, biting into his power, not by force, but by command. Law made manifest. Old magic designed to bind kings, not break them. Kael dropped to one knee, not because he was weak, because the realm demanded it. Alara screamed his name. The sound tore from her chest like something ripped free. "Elian, stay behind me," she ordered, already stepping forward, knife raised, useless against runes older than the mountains. The council elder raised one thin hand. "Enough," he said calmly. "This ends now." Guards closed in. Elian cried out, heat surging wildly around him, the ground beneath his feet cracking in spiderweb lines. "No!" Alara shouted. Don't use it!" But fear had found him at last, and fear was dangerous. Kael lifted his head sharply. "Elian," he said, voice cutting through the chaos like steel. "Look at me." The boy froze. Their eyes met. Kael's voice was low, steady, unyielding. "Breathe. You are not alone." Elian's chest hitched, then slowed. The heat receded, trembling, then settling like a banked flame. The clearing stilled. Even the council elder watched, unsettled. Kael exhaled slowly. That restraint, that was what terrified them most. "You see?" the elder said softly, turning to the gathered guards and watchers who had followed the disturbance into the ruins. "This is why the child cannot remain free." Alara spun on him. "Free!" she snarled. "You hunted him." "We protected the realm," the elder replied smoothly. "As we always have." Kael laughed. It was a quiet sound. "Dangerous. You hid behind prophecy," he said. "You lied behind law." The elder's smile thinned. "You agreed to exile." "I agreed under coercion," Kael said. "Under threat of civil war, under the promise that she would live." "And she did," the elder snapped. 7 years, a mercy." Alara stepped forward, shaking with rage. "Mercy?" she echoed. "You cast a pregnant woman into exile and call survival mercy?" Murmurs rippled through the gathered onlookers. The elder's gaze hardened. She was never meant to be more than a vessel. Silence fell. Elian stiffened. Kael's control snapped, not outward, not violently, but inward, like a blade drawn slow and certain. "Choose your next words carefully," he said. The elder lifted his chin. "The truth frightens you." "No," Kael replied, "it condemns you." The chains tightened, dragging Kael fully to his knees. Alara's heart lurched. "Elian," she whispered urgently, "stay with me." The boy nodded, fingers digging into her cloak. The elder raised his voice, projecting it beyond the ruins, carrying it to every witness present. "Let all hear this," he declared. "The Dragon King stands accused of endangering the realm by siring a forbidden heir. The woman knowingly bore it. The child's existence threatens the balance." Kael did not struggle. He looked at Alara instead, and in that look was everything he had never said. "I am here. I choose you. Whatever comes." She swallowed hard. "I speak now," Alara said, her voice shaking but loud. The elder frowned. "You have no standing." Kael's head snapped up. "She has mine." A ripple went through the crowd. The elder hesitated. "You are bound." "I am still king," Kael said evenly. "And I grant her voice." The chains glowed brighter, resisting, but they did not silence him. Alara drew a breath. 7 years of fear pressed behind her ribs. She stepped forward anyway. "I was banished while carrying his child," she said, her voice clear now, strengthened by truth. "Not because I betrayed the realm, not because I sought power, but because you were afraid." She pointed at the elder. "At words written before my son ever breathed," she continued. "At a prophecy you never questioned." The elder scoffed. "The prophecy is clear." Alara shook her head. "No." It was convenient. She turned, meeting the eyes of the guards, the watchers, the people drawn by fear and curiosity. "My child did not burn your cities," she said. "He did not summon war. He hid. He learned restraint. He learned mercy. While you sent hunters?" A murmur spread, uneasy, conflicted. Kael closed his eyes briefly, pride and grief twisted together in his chest. Alara's voice faltered for half a heartbeat, then steadied again. "You wanted a monster," she said, "so you called him one until it felt true." She knelt suddenly, bringing herself to Elian's height. Stand with me, she whispered. Elian hesitated, then stepped forward. The crowd leaned in. Heat shimmered faintly around him. Not threatening, not wild. Alive, the elder sneered. Pretty words will not change what he is. Kael lifted his head. Then let the realm decide what that is. The elder turned sharply. You would risk everything? Kael answered without hesitation. Yes. The chains trembled. He rose slowly, deliberately, pulling against them, not with brute force but with authority. The runes flickered. I submit to trial, Kael said, voice carrying like thunder. Not judgment passed in shadow, but before the full council. Before the realm. The elder's eyes widened. You cannot. I already have, Kael interrupted. Bring us to the citadel. Silence. Then, shockingly, the chains loosened, not broken, yielded. The law recognized his claim. The elder's face drained of color. They marched under open sky. Not as prisoners. As reckoning. Word spread faster than fire. By the time they reached the citadel gates, the city was awake, crowds gathering, whispers racing ahead of them like sparks. Ilara walked at Kael's side, not behind. Elian walked between them. Guards lined the path, not hostile, not welcoming. Uncertain, that uncertainty felt like victory. The council chamber had never felt so small. Stone benches filled with elders, nobles, generals, scholars. The air buzzed with restrained power. Kael stood at the center, Ilara beside him. Elian before them. No throne, no crown, just truth. The elder who had ordered the exile spoke first. The prophecy will be read in full, Kael said coldly, not the fragments you favored. A scribe hesitated, then began. The words echoed through the chamber, old, poetic, vague. From fire and flesh shall come a child unbound, feared as ruin, named as end, yet only choice shall shape the flame, guarded heart or hand of fear. Silence followed. Ilara's breath caught. That's not what you told the realm, she said quietly. The elder said nothing. Kael stepped forward. You condemned her on an interpretation, he said, and called it fate. He turned to the council. I allowed it, he continued, out of fear of war, of bloodshed, of my own power. He drew a breath. I was wrong. The admission hit like a blow. A king admitting failure publicly. I banished the woman I loved, Kael said, and my unborn child, not because they were dangerous, but because I lacked the courage to stand against fear. The chamber was utterly silent. Ilara's throat tightened. Elian looked up at him. Kael met his son's eyes. And that ends now, he said. He knelt, before them, before the realm. I claim them, Kael said, openly, without condition. Gasps rippled through the chamber. I claim Ilara, he continued, who endured exile with strength greater than any crown. Ilara's breath shook. I claim Elian, Kael said, voice thick. My son, my heir. My responsibility. The elder rose, furious. You would place the realm at risk, Kael stood. Power rolled off him, not destructive, not wild, contained, measured. The realm was at risk the moment you chose fear over truth, he said. He turned to the council. If my son ever becomes what you fear, he continued, it will not be because of his blood. It will be because of how he was treated. He looked down at Elian. I will not teach him that lesson. The elder lunged for a last defense. Then submit, he hissed. Bind your power. Prove your restraint. Kael did not hesitate. He placed his hand over his heart. I already have, he said. The air shifted. Every dragon within the mountains stirred, then settled. The bond between king and realm changed, not broken, not severed, rewritten, not rule through fear, but guardianship. The chamber shook, then stilled. The elder collapsed back into his seat, shaking. The council slowly, inexorably bowed. Ilara felt her knees weaken. Kael turned to her. Not as a king, as a man. I failed you, he said quietly. I will not ask forgiveness I have not earned. She searched his face, saw the weight, the scars, the truth of his choice now. You chose us, she said, finally. Yes, he replied, and I will keep choosing. She nodded once, that was enough, for now. They stood on the citadel balcony at dusk. The city below was quiet, not afraid, watching. Elian leaned against the stone railing, eyes wide as dragons circled far above, their wings cutting the sky. They're beautiful, he whispered. They always were, Ilara said. Kael watched his son, something in his chest loosening at last. You are safe here, he said to Ilara. She met his gaze. We will see, he smiled faintly. Fair. Later, when the city slept, Ilara stood alone beneath the open sky. Kale joined her, not touching. Stay, he said simply. She considered him, the city, the years behind them, the child between them. I will, she said. But not in silence, not in shadows. Never again, he promised. Elian's laughter echoed faintly from the hall behind them. Alara closed her eyes. Exile had not broken her, it had forged her, and what was once cast out had become the heart of the realm.